Hi, and welcome to another helping of my favorite foods. I'm your chef, ChristineCushing. Come on in. Today, I want to spark the baker in you with a perfect pumpkin pie that will have people asking, where's your bake shop? Get ready for a spicy maple pumpkin pie, perfect crust with a little dollop of that whipped cream on top. Let's go. Okay, baking pies, let's go. Step one, pastry. We're making it from scratch. What do you think? There's no store-bought pastry here. So I like a combination of two flours. In my bowl, pastry flour, a little bit softer, less protein, and then some all-purpose flour with a little bit more protein. That combination gives you the perfect texture. To that, I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. It gives the dough just a touch of color, and I like that, and just a hint of sweetness. Always a little bit of salt. Again, this is always for flavor, balancing that out. And then let's talk fat. So the lard is going to give us that what's called the shorter crust, so that crumbliness, that flakiness. The butter is going to give beautiful flavor, some color, and a crisp texture. I sometimes make it with just butter, but I think that this combination is the ultimate pastry for a pumpkin pie. Be prepared for a little bit of a mess today. Don't worry, not too much of a mess. We just want to work it quickly until it resembles a course meal. So we want it to be just right. That's what I'm looking for, okay? You notice I have not touched this dough with my hands yet. Very important reason. The heat from your hand is going to start melting that fat, and then it's going to make a tougher dough. You don't want that fat to melt out. Here is my water. I always add an ice cube to water, then pitch the ice cube, and I have ice cold water. Okay? I like to go with a spatula. Again, I'm not touching it at all with my hands. And I'm putting in about 65 grams, not about, exactly 65 grams. Now again, depending on your flour, depending on if your room, your kitchen is humid, you might want to just not add the whole thing at the beginning. But I think here's another one of those places where the pastry can go wrong. So again, back to the no touching. When I was in culinary school in France, I'll never forget it. The pastry chef, the guy who was our pastry instructor, would always come behind you and freak out and say, "Ne touchez pas la pâte, ne touchez pas la pâte," which means, hey, bonehead, don't touch the pastry. And that doesn't mean don't ever touch it. It just means don't fondle it, like don't get in there and get it all warm, okay? You notice my hands have not touched the pastry yet, the dough. Okay. Now this might seem that there isn't enough water. You see how it looks a little bit crumbly? You want to resist the urge to add too much water because then it's going to get too soft. So I'm going to work it now with my hands quickly but gently. This is the part that takes a little bit of practice, but I think knowing what you're looking for is the key. Okay, I think this is right on the money. You see how the butter is not, you can still see the fat little pieces. It's looking a little bit flaky, like there's pieces of the pastry on the board. So I think right here is where I'm going to stop. I also keep it in a disc, a flat disc. You never want to shape it into a ball because then when it chills and you go to roll it, it's going to crack. So very important, next phase is to chill it for an hour. Avoiding ne touchez pas la pâte. Okay, I'm going to wrap it, chill for 30 minutes. and a little light dusting on my board. Very important. So you see how it's come together and it's not falling apart? What looks like it's a little bit messy before you chill it, it absorbs some of that water as it chills, and that's why it's never good to add too much water at the beginning, otherwise it's just going to be too gummy. Who's ready to roll? A little bit of dusting on top, and now gently keeping the circle. I'm not hitting this too hard, just trying to maintain that circle. If you start too thick and roll it out, again, it's going to crack. This is only my second pie video. I love making pies. By the way, if you haven't seen my apple pie, you're going to want to click on that. My super crispy apple pie, all butter pastry. You will really want to make it. Okay, now we get it thinner. And the key for me is to keep the pastry moving. So I just work on one side and spin it like maybe 15 or 20 degrees. If it's getting a little sticky, a bit on my rolling pin and on the dough, and I keep going. You see that butter right on top, and then little bits of the lard. You can see it's all perfectly worked through. That is going to be a sweet pastry, as in really nice. The key here is to have even thickness all around, but this is looking pretty great. I might trim just some edges here. But that's looking pretty sweet. Now, it's got to go into the pie plate. Without getting into long discussions, I have selected a glass pie plate for this. The type of pie plate you use really affects the outcome of your pastry. So let's talk a little bit about glass. It heats up gently but evenly, so you don't get a very strong transfer of heat right away, but once it gets going, it really has this nice even heat. So, and then you can look at it inside, so you can see how golden the crust is getting. And they tend to be in these nice little shapes for single, like one shell pie, so an open face pie like this is. I tried to make this, or I have made it before, in ceramic. The ceramic is actually the worst for it because it takes even more time to heat up, and they tend to be deeper, so the pastry doesn't get crispy. So for me, it's all about the glass pie plate for this particular pie. And just gently, not applying any pressure, just gently slide the plate in. And again, you notice I'm not touching it too much with my hands to get it warm. Keeping it cold and quick. Those are the two words that you need to keep in mind when making pie. Cold and quick. And don't touch it. Just like that. And the first phase, so that blind baking first phase, 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes, but it has to be super chilled, okay? Okay, so there is the blind baked pie shell. So those beans or the pie weights came out 15 minutes into it, then I continue to bake it for another 10 to 15 minutes. At this point, you can see that the pastry, you can see the flakiness and crispiness, but it's not fully cooked. But this blind baking is going to ensure that we don't get that soggy, gummy bottom I was talking about. So let's let this chill and move on to the filling. Everything is going to be done by hand for this filling. It's super easy. So I start with 3 large eggs in my bowl. Let's go one-handed today. Why not? What's so great about this pie? Why did I want you to learn how to make it? So eggs, and I'm using some Demerara brown, dark brown sugar going in. The idea of a pumpkin pie for me really evokes those fall, warm, comforting spices, that perfect custard that isn't too sweet. And it's just such, to me, a comforting dessert. And I really wanted you to have the skills to make it exactly the way it should be. You can see the color. And already, I haven't added anything. Just that brown sugar, the beautiful aromas of that. Milk going in are gonna be amazing. Now it's time for the spices, because that's the iconic character of the pumpkin pie. I mean, that's why it's called pumpkin pie spice, right? It's crazy. So speaking of pumpkin pie spice, I'm in this recipe calling for 1.5 teaspoons, so 7.5 ml of pumpkin pie spice. That has all the prerequisites, you know, your cinnamon, your clove, your nutmeg, your ginger, what am I missing? Allspice, 5 spices in there. Now, for me, and actually this pie is probably dedicated to my sister-in-law because she loves it. So I'm going heavy on the ginger. I'm adding a little bit more ground ginger, and this is like heavily potent ginger that she actually gave me. So it's gonna be super gingery. But again, you're the boss. I'm not gonna tell you how much ginger to use, but you gotta use some ginger. Already, you know how peppery that smells? Woo, baby. Now so far I've only added 1/3 cup of brown sugar. In addition to the brown sugar, I am adding some maple syrup. Yes, again, the iconic sweetener of the Northeast, Northeastern North America, Vermont, Quebec, Ontario. It's just so beautiful. And the smell of that, you really get that concentration of the maple tree, the sap. So, so incredible. A good sign when you're baking anything is in the process. If you start to salivate, if you start imagining how it's going to taste, that's a good sign. So there's all the ingredients except for the pumpkin puree, which is now going in. Oh man, does that already smell incredible? Now we fill it very carefully. "40 minutes in the oven or until it's set." Success! Who wants a piece of pumpkin pie? I'm gonna cut one for myself. Are you in? Okay, now I wanna show you why we're all here. You see that pastry? Super crispy on the outside, perfectly colored, and the custard or the filling is set. Ready? Do you see what I see? The other part I forgot to mention is breathe. It's very important when you're baking that you breathe, because I was like, oh, I want to get the perfect slice. Now I'm breathing. It's all good. But you see that perfectly crisp pastry, not too thick in the bottom. You get this amazing sheen. I can smell it from here. I'm going to give it a dollop of this beautiful vanilla whipped cream just for you. Okay. I mean, look at that, is all I'm saying. You can see it, you can hear it. You can't touch, smell, or taste it unless you make it. But I'll remind you how good it is. Look at that bottom, nice, crispy on the bottom, golden, thin. Are angels singing? It's so good. Whoa! The texture of this custard and all the flavors and not too sweet. Hang on. I mean, wow. Have you thought of the name for your bake shop yet? When you make this and start giving it to people, they're going to be like, I didn't know you're a baker. You are. Thank you so much for joining me on a sweet helping of my favorite foods. Please like, subscribe, let me know what's happening in your kitchen, and I'll see you next time for another helping. Bye.